Tracing careers is about the lines we draw, erase, and draw again over time. Join us as we sit down with leaders from Vermont's design community to talk about mentorship, mistakes, and personal growth, all over a cup of coffee.
So, going back to architecture, can you
Mhm.
tell us about your background and how did you get to Vermont and how did you get to be the executive director of AIA?
I feel like I've had such a circuitous route through my life, both personally and professionally. I came to Vermont initially out of graduate school. I did a master's degree in fine arts, and then came to Vermont to do an artist residency in Johnson at the Vermont Studio Center. And I was there for a month, and it was amazing. It was just, 60 artists and writers, and they give you a studio and 3 meals a day, and you're just there to make art. And I really loved it. I loved Vermont. And I came around the same time. There was a art gallery in Stowe that was looking for a new assistant director. And so I applied for that position and interviewed for that while I was at the residency. And then they ended up offering me the job. And at that point, I didn't really know anyone in Vermont, but I decided to move and take the job and found an apartment in North Hyde Park, which is like so far away from anything. And so I moved to Vermont, I think it was 2012, like fall of 2012, and had the loneliest winter I've ever experienced out in the middle of the woods. And then moved to Burlington and was there for about a year and a half, commuting to Stowe. And then I left Vermont for about a year. I got into an artist residency in Omaha, Nebraska, which turned out to be an amazing experience. It was 3 months in a warehouse, and they just, again, it's like they just give you space and you get to make things, and that was really fun. And then after that, I kind of bounced around a bit. I went to Los Angeles for the summer. My brother lives there. A friend of his was directing a movie, so he asked me to be the production designer on that, which is something I'd done a little bit of when I was living in Philly. And then I moved to New York City for 7 months, and I could not get out fast enough. I felt like New York City chewed me up and spit me out. It was just not a good fit. I could not find a job to save my life. I was like living in an apartment in Queens and just trying to make it work, and it wasn't working. So then I came back to Vermont and then switched from working in art galleries and got a job at the Burlington Business Association, which was like a nonprofit association, so similar in some ways to AIA Vermont. Worked there for a couple of years, and then actually a friend of mine who's a member of AIA Vermont gave me the heads up that they were looking for a new executive director, and she recommended I put my name in, so I did. And I met with a couple of the board members at that time who were on the search committee, and did this exact same thing. And yeah, they offered me the job. So it's kind of, I mean, for me, I think it's a good fit. It's like I come from a background in fine arts. I've worked in galleries. I've worked in nonprofits. I'm a generalist by nature. So like starting up a podcast, I'm just sort of like, yeah, let's figure it out, So I think in that sense, it has been a really good fit for me.
Well, we're very lucky to have you. And from the time I've been working with you, I find that you are a person that connects the dots very easily and like to connect the dots and strategize. So I think that's one of your biggest assets.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun. And I get to work with great people.
So you were trained as an artist, and I'm finding this out now. You're not architect? Or?
No.
Oh, wow. Super cool.
Yeah, I'm always the non-architect in the room.
That's
Which is
awesome.
great because you bring a different perspective.
Yeah.
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 And also scrap all these questions I had. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Now I see why you are really good at connecting all these dots, because I can definitely make the connection that you are overseeing everything and understanding from a completely different perspective, which
Yeah.
raises a bunch of more interesting questions, while you're like, no, why do we look at it that way? So
Yeah.
that's exciting. I'm excited.
And when you went to your residency in Omaha, what brought you to Vermont? Why Vermont was important, was a place to come back to?
It felt like the first place that I had ever lived that felt like I could be here for a long time. And I think that that was something I'd been looking for. Like growing up, we moved around a lot. We moved from Ireland when I was 5. And then for the first, 5 or 6 years, we moved every year. So like I went to 5 different schools before I was in 4th grade. And then kind of, I think when I was, 9 or so, my parents bought the house that they still live in. So it was sort of like they finally settled, but I was still in moving mode. And I was always kind of looking for my place. And then I think when I came to Vermont, I felt like this could be it. And I've been here 15 years now.
Did you work in architecture in New York?
No.
What does it feel to the change of pace from New York to Vermont, and if you can relate it somehow to architecture or the architects you've worked with here?
It's really interesting because I think architects, generally speaking, have a little bit of a reputation for being elitist.
Mhm.
If you will
Yeah.
allow me that.
Yeah. No, we allow everything. Fair game.
And I would say I have not had that experience with anyone I've met in Vermont.
In Vermont.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas, and I think that the connection there for me, at least, is when I was in New York City, it was the first time in my life, even though I had lived in Philadelphia and went to undergrad there, it was the first time I felt like I am a small fish in a big pond here. And it
Mhm.
felt really like it's an impossible place to make things happen. And I am someone who likes to make things happen. And I think it's because the scale of the place is so much bigger and there's so much more competition for space and time and energy. And especially for me as an artist, I felt like, why am I in the place where studio, literally square footage, costs more here than anywhere else on the planet? This doesn't make sense for me to be here. So it kind of just, in that sense, I was like, I can't make anything happen here. And then coming to Vermont, it felt like this is a place where not only is it's a smaller population, it's a smaller scale, but it's more community minded.
Mhm.
And so if you are doing things, people are more inclined to want to be involved and to want to help you make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think
Engage.
that's kind of the main difference to my mind, is like Vermont is very approachable. It is a smaller scale place, and so things can kind of come to fruition here easier.
From my experience living in New York, I have a pretty similar read, and it's that it was highly competitive and there was a lot of space, but there wasn't too much space at the same
Yeah.
time. And one thing that I found when I moved to Vermont is that everybody was so kind,
Yeah.
but everybody was so competent and so smart, and they were so grounded. Like it's an amazing place
Yeah.
to practice. I don't know, Beto, you have
Yeah.
almost a similar path to mine. I don't know, what is your read?
Yeah, I have the same read in one way. I do have other reads of like, for example, she was asking me how is the expansion village in Plainfield going,
Yeah.
and there's no momentum. Like we tried to push the momentum throughout the team, throughout the committee, and it's really hard to get these folks that have been living and grounded in Plainfield for so long to wrap their heads around development. And it was, I'm just speaking on the other side of the coin because you guys already said the beautiful things, but this is more challenging for me. But again, I feel like when I go to work, I feel respected, I feel supported, and I feel like I can be vulnerable at my office environment with my friends, with my pals, that I could not do in New York. It was
Right.
like if you had a question, you were looked at in a way of like, how do you not know this? if you are a 2-year graduate of blah 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 or whatever. Here it's almost like everybody's happy to be on the same plane with you.
Yeah.
So I've only been here for about 5 years, but yeah, that's why I was curious, since you've been here for a lot longer, coming from a different background and dealing with people in the same industry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's also the flip side of that too, whereas I think maybe part of the Plainfield challenge is that Vermont can be somewhat isolated.
Right.
And so there is sometimes, you know, like I would love to see more contemporary art here, but it's just not the place that it's going to be free-flowing necessarily. And I think to my mind that does, it gets hard because it can feel kind of homogenous. And people maybe sometimes want things to stay the way they are more than be open to change. That kind of can be hard here.
That's an interesting point, because Vermont is very welcoming to other cultures,
Yeah.
but at the same time is very homogenous. And I think that's a discussion that has been brought up many times on why is Vermont still homogenous, even though they're still open.
Yeah.
They've welcomed many people from different cultures and different stories. And everywhere I go, that's another reason I feel very comfortable being vulnerable, is because people are very welcoming to that, to listen to you and to allow you to speak up. And they actually advocate, and they don't think that they are helping you, they actually think that they're with you, which also makes a difference.
Yeah.
And you're doing something and you feel like somebody's with you rather than you're asking a favor. That's a completely different dynamic.
True. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Wow. We got into it.
Yeah, so from reflecting on that point, like how this reflect to architecture, and how do you think that architecture and preservation are balancing in Vermont?
It's funny because I actually don't feel like an expert. As much as my job kind of places me at this sort of overview point, I feel like I know much more about the architects, the people, the members, everyone that I actually work with, than I do about the work. You know, and I get to see what people are working on when they submit to the design awards, and you know, obviously I see projects going up as I'm driving around and things like that. But I think that there does seem to be, at least to my mind, there is a kind of a Vermont, I guess you would call it the Vermont vernacular. There's the Vermont style, which I love personally when it comes to architecture. And I'm curious to see how that evolves over time.
Yeah,
You know?
how
What's
it
that
becomes.
style?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's the sort of, at least right now, I think it's like the slick, modern barn house chalet. But then it's different when it comes to like a municipal building like the one we're in. You know, this is, I think, what I think of as, I'm seeing a lot of the style, especially the exterior of this building, popping up in these sort of newer downtown areas. And I think it's also, it's sort of a modern municipal building, you know. It's not your standard neo-classical, you know, like what they would have built a long time ago.
Yeah. And do you think the values of Vermont, like all these values of community, translate in the way that things get developed or built or design-wise, aesthetics or projects that happen that you're part of?
I think it does, in the sense that there definitely seems to be a lot of projects that really go into the community and rely on charrettes and community feedback sessions and, you know, asking the community what they want in this building. I remember when we toured this library, they had talked about how they did a lot of that, and the number one request from the community was a fireplace. And then the amount of like bending over backwards that they tried to do to provide a fireplace while keeping the building zero fossil fuel, you know, like it was definitely an achievement. And then it turned out to be it's not a fireplace, it's like a water vapor something or other. I forget what they even called it, but it's kind of a faux fire.
Okay.
I thought that was really funny that it was like the biggest request was fulfilled, and they really like made sure to make that happen. But it also had to be aligned with the bigger goals of the project, which was keeping it, energy efficient and sustainable and having a low carbon footprint. So I think that is a really interesting sort of like example of how community involvement and community shapes a project, but there's also sometimes the project itself has its own kind of mission statement. And so there's a dance between those two things. Yeah.
I like the idea of the dance between both of these things. What do you think, Andres?
No, I was just thinking how community is very important in Vermont. But how do we build community in such a separated, like, physical space? And how can we foster more community
Yeah,
in the state?
totally. Especially when the winter separates a lot of people even more.
Yeah.
And I've noticed the winter also kind of pushes people away. A lot of people travel in the winter here because it's so long that they, I think, assume that they can just go somewhere, come back a few months later.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, if one of the things I heard you at the beginning say, that you had this career in art and you had all this freedom, that usually happens with architecture too. You have 5 years where you go to studio and professors want you to think always outside the box.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have witnessed, or if you have also experienced in your own way, how that translated when you were in a more tangible, agenda.
Yeah. Honestly, I miss that. Like, I miss being, a young artist in my 20s and having less responsibility and being able to think more creatively.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say this job, although it does offer creative opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
it is in other ways very administrative.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it feels like if my brain has an administrative part and a creative part, the creative part might be withering a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a scary feeling as an artist. And I imagine it to be similar for architects. You have this sort of, at the beginning of your career, end of school, beginning of career, I've seen it when we go to Norwich, where the students are really being pushed to think
Yeah.
very creatively. And
Right.
those are the projects that really get a lot of accolades and win awards and things like that.
Exactly.
And then you start an office job. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like, that's so far from the day to day, unless you're walking into a really, special studio that somehow is able to continue that. And I think that's maybe where, like, side projects come in, at the
Yeah.
individual level. Like,
Yeah.
for me, I'm starting more and more to think about learning how to use tools that I've known for a while. I've renovated a couple of houses. I taught myself SketchUp, basically. And now I'm thinking about, how can I use SketchUp or some other 3D modeling program to model ideas for art projects and, large scale sort
That's
of
awesome.
installations and things like that. But it's like always at the end of the to-do list every day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the hard part,
Of
is
course.
making the time to actually, like, get into it.
Of course, because I think when you spend 8 hours of your day, like, I don't know, we spend maybe 16 hours, around 16 hours a week,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
If you spend half of those doing something, the other half it's really hard to
Mhm.
come up with try to pursue another project. It's almost like you feel like you're doing extra credit in school or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think it's something that, for me at least, has always been a struggle. Like, even when I've been at my most prolific
Mhm.
in terms of making art, it's still, it's that sort of procrastination on getting started or getting in the studio, or half the time it's like you trick yourself by you go in and you start cleaning just to be in the space, and then you start to kind of pick up things, and it makes you think like, oh, I really do actually want to kind of play with that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, half of it is like tricking yourself and getting in the right mindset and turning it into a project that I find like if I involve other people, then I'm way more likely to do it. It's like having a gym buddy where like you have to show up at a time and a place because you talked your friends into helping you with something.
Yeah.
So now you have to make it happen, or like, setting deadlines. And
Making a podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
All of the above.
Riding bikes at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Speaking about dreaming, are there any initiatives that you dream to see as executive director for AIA Vermont?
I have a lot of ideas.
That's great.
Has a podcast?
A
Were there more
podcast?
ideas? No, I meant like, has the podcast kind of segue into other ideas that come up?
I think it's the podcast feels like it could be really good for stirring up new ideas, which is exciting. I mean, I've probably mentioned to Chi before, like, I've always had this idea that AIA Vermont should have either a sandcastle building competition or a snow castle building competition.
Ooh.
And like do it on North Beach or do it up on the mountains in the winter, but have it be kind of a fundraising effort that, you don't necessarily have to be an architect, like cheese furniture competition.
Yeah.
Anyone could sign up to do it, and at the end you have this maybe a small winter village of of like sculptures and sandcastles or snow castles.
Ooh, sand and snow.
Yeah,
That'd
right.
be cool. See when it melts, the rest, whatever is there.
It's like a form, like a
Four season. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've always thought something like that would be fun. And then I think to your point, like, how do you build community in a place that's so rural and people are so spread out? That is such a fascinating, hard question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, like, personally and professionally that I think I've really kind of thought a lot about. Like, moving to different towns and having to kind of figure out how to meet people. I think I've done it a number of different ways, but, like, there's always this feeling of, there's a community here, how do I break into it? And that can be really difficult. And like, now I'm living in Middlebury, I would say I've met more people at the dog park than anywhere else, which has been great.
Well, there's a dog park.
There's a dog park.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And in Virgins, I volunteered at the thrift store that's in town, mostly because I wanted the discount. But it turned out to be a great way to meet people, and the woman who ran it was just like a really outgoing person who's fantastic at introducing you to people. So anyone who comes in the shop, if she knows them, she would introduce you to them. And so that became a really good way for me to kind of get to know people in the community, and definitely, made friends that way. But it's tough. Like, you end up being alone in your house a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that feeling of like, I know there's people out there.
Yeah, and great people.
And great people. But I also don't want to be a weirdo and just walk up to people on the street.
Yeah. I think
I'm thinking of from an organizational point of view, how we are, like, it's mostly central Vermont and Chittenden County, our main areas that our membership is part of. And I'm imagining that as our house. And the question is, how can we get to the northern Vermont or southern Vermont and connect with other people there?
Yeah.
And that's a question that I haven't been able to answer.
Yeah.
I'm going to give kind of a hybrid answer here. So in terms of architecture projects, the Plainfield Expansion Village is concerned about where the funding is coming from. So they are very sensitive to what kind of land is going to be sold and how much money comes and how that affects taxes and things like that. So people want green spaces, but they don't want to pay for it. And people want, like, a challenge I had when I just moved to Vermont, Montpelier, is that there are no dog parks. And I have a dog. But we were excited to come to Vermont because Vermont is a very green space where dogs can be off leash for whatever, the whole state or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but then people are walking trails with their dogs and they're leashed. So then when my dog is unleashed, he gets nervous about another dog being unleashed. So I release my dog, and then the other dog is not released. And then there's this dynamic where it's like a dog park, everybody is off leash, every
Yeah.
dog is off leash, and so the dogs understand each other, they find their spaces, it's ample enough for all the dogs to find their own space. And it's a great space to meet people.
Yeah.
So more dog parks could bring people together,
Yeah.
but then dog parks are hard to fund.
Yeah.
And green spaces, public spaces are not easy to fund. So I think that's my hybrid understanding of what you guys were both discussing. I think I don't know.
Well, and there's something really interesting, I think, with community building where it's like there's accidental communities that
Mhm.
pop up as a byproduct of something like a dog park, where like the intention is not to build community, the intention is to have somewhere for your dog to run around.
Yeah.
And then there's very intentional community building kind of, exercises or projects that are done on like an urban planning scale,
Mhm.
and that I think as a known skeptic, sometimes I'm more inclined to think that the accidental is more successful than the very purposeful, like we will bring people to this space through XYZ initiative.
Definitely. The floods have created a lot of new green spaces where FEMA is buying out houses. So there's going to be forced new green spaces.
Yeah.
And there's talks in Barrie and Montpelier and Plainfield that there's going to be like hills, green hills, so that they can absorb more water and things like that. But it is a reactionary
Yeah.
way of creating community, hopefully.
Yeah, that kind of, it's like a natural byproduct
Uh-huh.
of obviously a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's that kind of unexpected good silver lining that comes out of it. That's interesting.
So what can we tell the youth generation? Like,
You can't learn architecture from
When-
TikTok.
yeah, you go to school, you have all this freedom, then you go to work, and it's completely different. Completely different. Also, maybe, I don't know, maybe in school everybody had their own project, so everybody had ownership of their own project, but then when you go to an office, you're kind of like in this culture of you are doing something for someone else,
Yep.
and someone else is doing the project or something like that.
Well, it's also having a client, like,
Right.
like the 90% of the success of a project is the client.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that part of what we're talking about is like how do you keep that creative element alive and nurture that
Mm-hmm.
while having to kind of let go of some of that freedom that you had as a younger student or as a recent graduate.
Yeah.
Because I think that ultimately that's what gives you a unique voice. But there is this sort of, period of time within your professional life where you're kind of just, your head is down and you're working.
Mm-hmm.
But that if you can keep that creative element alive, and maybe it is through, completely different projects on the side. You're making furniture, or you're designing clothing, or you're, making podcasts or videos or whatever. I think that does end up popping up again. Like, I think that's
Mhm.
where, when you've kind of put the time in, and maybe it's you're starting your own studio, or you're getting projects that give you opportunity to really kind of expand on that creative sort of muscle that you already have, that you haven't let wither.
Mhm, mhm.
I think that's where it's important to kind of keep that throughout and find other opportunities to let it grow. And I say this to myself as an artist who has not made art not capital A art in I don't know how many years now. You know, I've kind of lost track of it. But I know it's still there, and I feel like I'm kind of hitting a point where it's like I need to get that back out and up and running, because I know I need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also finding the right community to support you and
Yeah.
help support these ideas that you have.
Yeah.
It's like the individual going into a collective, and then it's going to be refueled and creating more and more creativity.
And I think being really intentional about that, you
Yeah.
know, like making a point to surround yourself with people who are also looking to nurture that, and who you feel like are helping you with it in you. Like if I'm always around people who I can't talk to about being creative, or I can't talk to about, you know, films I've watched or books I've read. Yeah, like it's you need to have that as part of your, ideally, kind of your daily dialogue.
Hopefully you meet more of those at dog parks.
It is a variety of people. It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah, it's great.
And I observe how people are with their dogs and how their dogs are with the owners and everything. All these dynamics are really funny.
Yeah.
Are really enjoyable. I miss dog parks.
Come to Middlebury.
Yeah. I'll hop really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Tracing Careers. We hope this conversation resonated with you. Share it with someone in your community. Until next time, keep tracing your path.